Hi everyone, welcome back to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions, professionals, how history intersects with education, culture, science, and today, space. I'm Karen Yang, host of Historically Speaking. Today we are joined by Mike Hennessy, the manager of learning and programs at the Moonshot Museum. The museum is a museum like no other. It's where you can watch the real-time assembly of lunar spacecraft, go on your own simulated lunar missions, and find your place in the future of human space exploration. Located in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, this museum is aiming to inspire a diverse community to find their place in the future of human space exploration through a lot of innovative and engaging expositions, and programs fueled by science, technology, engineering, and the arts. It will take people of all backgrounds and all interests to drive innovation and explore space. And again, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any questions or anything you want to add to your bio, I guess?
No, you did a great job. Nice to see you, Karen, and thanks for having me on today. I'm just pleased to be
Yeah,
here.
of course. So I'm just gonna dive straight into it. So what was kind of like the inspiration behind the Moonshot Museum, or what kind of was going on behind the scenes or leading up to the creation of this museum?
So Pittsburgh is a robotics town. We like to think of ourselves as a town of makers, and historically, it was all about making steel for the nation. And in more recent decades, it's been about making robots and innovative technologies, including robotic landers for the moon. Astrobotic is a space tech company, has about 15 years of history in Pittsburgh. It's spun out of Carnegie Mellon University, and it's grown rapidly. And now it's poised to really be one of the front runners in our return to the moon in a whole new way, doing commercial space exploration. So the idea for Moonshot Museum was to give folks really a front door, a means of access to the space industry, to be able to come in and on any given day experience a museum that shares a wall of windows with a real spacecraft factory.
Mhm.
So we think of ourselves as that window into the work of real engineers and technicians building spacecraft.
Mhm.
And from there, also being a living lab for the community to come in and go on their own immersive lunar missions. And our goal is it's never quite the same mission or never quite the same experience twice. And our hope really is that everyone comes and finds their place in the future of space.
Yeah, I really like how you talked about how, people walk through the museum and there's probably like no two similar or like same experiences. Similar maybe, but not exactly like exact replicas. And that sounds really cool that, a lot of people can engage in different ways in different like kind of spectrums of interest as well. I think that's just super, super cool for sure. I guess like I wanted to ask more about these lunar missions. Before our interview, you also showed me some really cool demonstrations. So, what are these like lunar missions, I guess, that the Moonshot Museum seeks to kind of highlight or really make kind of transparent through those windows, I guess?
Sure. I'm going to actually share screen real quick just to give an overview. The United States, the last landing on the moon of a spacecraft was in 1972. And we're going to be making history soon with a brand new mission to the moon that will be launching early next year. It's heading to a section of the moon called Lacus Mortis. Lacus means lake in Latin. It goes back to the idea of ancient people believing these were seas and oceans and lakes on the moon. That patch I showed there was sort of an ancient crater that formed Lacus Mortis years ago. It's a plain of volcanic rock. It has an even deeper, more pronounced crater in the center called Berg. We'll fly in over that. There are two twin mountain peaks in the center of that crater. Each is about half a mile tall. I
Mhm.
share this just to show the destination of where we're returning to the moon next year. Astrobotic in Pittsburgh is building a robotic lander that's going to be heading to this section of the moon.
Wow.
And that's a mission actually that's under construction right now. That's one of the joys of my job is being able to see the technicians just inches away building the spacecraft that's going to be landing there. Aside from the central crater you see there, it's pretty much a flat plain. It has lots of cracks, what we call rills right there from ancient magma that erupted through the surface. But it's this volcanic plain, and that's where we're sending the Peregrine spacecraft. This will be, as I said, the first American spacecraft to land on the moon in 50 years. It's named for the Peregrine Falcon, so the world's fastest animal. And it's the first time a commercial spacecraft will go to the moon. Here it is under construction. This is what it looks like right now. So it's a whole new way of really approaching space. The idea that NASA has lots of scientific payloads on there to search for ice, to search for carbon dioxide and methane and useful resources for us on the moon to make
Mhm.
rocket fuel. But there are also payloads from countries around the world.
Mhm.
There are 24 total payloads on here, and this will be many nations' first scientific expedition to the moon on
Oh,
board
that's
Peregrine.
great.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like
Um,
really frontiers in history for sure.
yeah, it really is. This is our mission patch, the Peregrine Falcon. It will be landing on a waning gibbous moon. That's the moon phase you see there in the patch. All that symbolism baked in. That's what the moon will look like to us in the sky when the ship lands. There are 7 craters for the 7 major nations with cargo and science on board. There are also some fun commemorative items and advertisements as well. There's a soda pop company sending up a powdered drink. There are people sending up hopes and wishes to the moon that have been scanned and digitally stored on the spacecraft.
Wow.
So all of that in addition to the science. Um, and that lander, once it lands on that volcanic plain, Lacus Mortis, will deposit the rover that you see under construction right there. That rover is named Iris, and it will look for essentially holes in the ground. We call them skylights, and they lead to massive caverns under the moon. So the moon was volcanic eons ago. That lava carved out massive caves that could easily swallow up a city, say the size of Philadelphia, could be swallowed up inside these caverns. But those caverns are also really advantageous because they're more temperature controlled. You know, the moon can get very hot during the day, hotter than boiling water, but cryogenic cold at night. A cavern underground would be more stable in terms of temperature. So when we send future human settlers to the moon, just as we started in caves as a species, we may start that way again on the moon, living in these more climate controlled areas and inflatable habitats in caves. Here you can see a photo of Peregrine the lander, and just off on the left is Iris the rover, built by students at Carnegie Mellon University.
Wow.
Um, this is just a simulation of how it will get to the moon.
Whoa. This is like really conceptual and like really gives you that scope of how small we are.
Really does. And the moon being our closest neighbor, but thinking about just the vast distances, yeah. Peregrine's going to launch on a pretty powerful rocket called the ULA Vulcan Centaur. Now, Apollo astronauts back in the 60s and 70s on the gigantic Saturn V, they had a straight 3-day shot to the moon. Peregrine's going to take a little bit of a different journey. As you saw, it was leaving Earth in a series of elliptical paths. The moon
Mm.
caught up with it, and it's now doing a number of winding ellipses till it finally gets closer and closer to the moon. So it's actually going to be more like a 3-week journey.
Oh, wow. Whoa, this is so cool.
It will land in that volcanic plain. So we just have an artistic rendering of what that will look like here. And then a happy day in mission control. So,
Yay.
so where I am in the museum is also where mission control takes place as well. The minute that rocket leaves Earth's atmosphere, the
Mhm.
folks just a few rooms from me will navigate Peregrine to the moon and handle its science operations on the surface.
This is so cool. I think like wow. First of all, I'm like kind of blown away by the fact that, like in 50, it has been like 50 years since we've done something like this or like landed on the moon. I think like a question that immediately kind of comes to mind is that like I think like I really liked how you mentioned how there's also going to be a lot of like cultural artifacts on this journey. Will there be like music or something like on the um or like I think like when I was younger, I like maybe wrongly perceived or I heard that like, hey, all of these like the Hubble Space Telescope or one of the like or like one of the machines kind of like orbiting the universe also like play out songs or something like that. So or like hold songs just in case we run into aliens or something like that. Does the lunar mission now also have something like that as well?
Um, yeah, so the Voyager space probes, which traveled out into the outer solar system, had those golden records on board
Hmm.
with music. And there are all kinds of mementos that are heading um, to the moon. There are photographs that have been digitized. There are novels. There's actually a small piece of Mount Everest that's going to the
Wow.
moon, which I think is really exciting. It's a project called DHL Moonbox.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, all kinds of interesting things. Lots of text, lots of mementos and wishes um, that are going up, which I think kind of personalize the experience.
Hmm.
Sending
Yeah.
up pieces of our culture and who we are into to space. So, and kind of the imprint that we made on the cosmos.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's something I'm getting from the Moonshot Museum is that it's a very personal experience that, even though it's like, oh, we're all looking at the same mission or like the same technology that's going into building this really great mission, we all kind of take away different things or have different experiences kind of associated with that, which I think is super cool. Yeah. I guess like another question I would have, I think did you mention another mission that I guess that you would like to show or yeah, sure, go ahead with that.
Sure, yeah. So Peregrine is being built right now. It's going to be launching next year. But our hope with Moonshot Museum is always to give a window into what's coming next. Um,
Hmm.
Peregrine sending up lots of payloads from around the world, lots of cultural mementos, and lots of science to explore the moon. The next spaceship that's going to be built at Astrobotic that we'll be interpreting at Moonshot Museum is the Griffin spacecraft. And I'll do a quick share to show where that is heading. So our destination now is the South Pole of the moon. Um, the Apollo program sent astronauts really to the equatorial region of the moon. Now we're
Hmm.
looking at the South Pole, and what you're looking at is data that shows us water ice. We know it's there from orbit. Now we need that ground truth data to pinpoint its exact location.
Mm.
This is the geographic South Pole of the moon. We have an elevation map there of Shackleton Crater, named for the explorer of Antarctica on Earth, Ernest Shackleton. But Shackleton Crater at the moon's South Pole is completely in darkness. Other
Wow.
than you can see those rims have a little bit of sunlight on them. Um,
Hmm.
this is one of the coldest spots in the entire solar system. So comets that
Wow.
would have smashed into the moon eons ago would have deposited ice, and that ice is still frozen in craters like this one.
Wow.
And so, as NASA is talking about Project Artemis, the twin sister
Hmm.
of Apollo, the goddess of the moon, Artemis will send the first woman to the moon, the first person of color. Um,
Hmm.
it will establish an entire permanent human presence on the moon, but we're going to the South Pole because that's where the ice is.
Hmm.
Can also see, I think, just for fun, you can see what the Earth looks like. It is upside down because we're getting a
Oh
South Pole
yeah.
perspective. Yeah,
Whoa, I did not. I was like, is that South America like flipping around like a
right.
pear?
That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
things at Moonshot Museum is you can step into a whole lunar landscape. Um,
Hmm.
and it's just always, I think, a moment of cognitive dissonance to see the Earth in the sky, but turned upside down because you're at the
Yeah.
South Pole. Um, so it's been of interest for a long time. India first discovered water in the South Polar regions with a probe that impacted Shackleton Crater and found direct evidence of ice. Um, NASA also sent a probe called LCROSS, which purposely smashed into a nearby crater and kicked up ice as well as some useful metals. And then the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has been mapping this crater for years. This is the crater we just looked at in darkness. This is a 3D map of it.
Mm.
So you can see the blue is the deepest part there. The blue, where it's always dark, is a great place for ice. The red rim there sees a lot of sunlight, so it'd be a great place to install a solar power station. So lots of advantages for sending astronauts back to one of these craters like Shackleton. Griffin is the mission that's being built right through the glass here at Astrobotic next to Moonshot Museum.
Mhm.
And Griffin is the big giant spacecraft you see there with ramps on it. It will be about the size of a car. When it gets to the moon, it will allow a NASA robot called Viper to roll off the ramp and go looking for ice.
Mm.
Now we're at the south pole of the moon, so it has solar panels, but they're vertically oriented because the
Yeah.
sun is like so low on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll show you real quickly kind of the path that Griffin's going to take. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited, I think, to bring visitors next year to see that under construction um,
Mm-hmm.
and interpret, I think, the journey of building it, the journey of where it's going to go on the moon, and also really telling stories about the people who make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because to make a robotic mission like this happen, it really takes engineers, it takes people with expertise who've gone to trade schools. So it takes welders and HVAC technicians who design and make clean rooms like ours operate. It takes folks who design innovative navigation techniques. Here we can see lots of potential landing sites that NASA is considering for future astronauts on the moon. And they're
Mm-hmm.
all near that South Pole Shackleton crater, which is right in the center of your view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just slide us over a little bit through these long shadows to a crater very close by. It's called Nobile Crater, named for an Italian explorer, Umberto Nobile, who also explored the Arctic on Earth. So really going with these polar exploration themes.
Yeah, that's so cool. Cool.
um, and then this is the pathway that once Griffin gets to the moon, Viper will take it. We'll kind of skirt around the outsides of these craters and use its sensors to find exactly where that ice is.
Mm-hmm.
Ice to drink, ice to break apart to make air. We could even take that H2O and break it apart with electrolysis, with electricity, and make liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to power rockets.
Wow.
So yeah, all of this is really starting with this mission
Mm-hmm.
with Viper and Griffin, and I'm so excited about it because it's really the start of something exciting, of finding the
Mm-hmm.
resources we need to send people back to the moon and to make this permanent presence. As we look ahead, building an orbiting space station around the moon and always having people there doing science.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. I think I also really enjoyed how you talked about, a lot of this process and documenting this process is also about like the people who are making it and like the perspectives that are like changing and I think that's like super cool and I love how the museum is like directly connected to, being able to see that hands-on and, no doubt inspiring so many generations to come with, hey, I want to go to space or something like that and making that much more accessible and seem more like a reality as well. So super cool. Yeah, I wanted to wrap up with one more question on kind of, I love how, you're in the public education kind of sector of the museum. How do you think the general public, who might not be able to visit the Moonshot Museum, might be able to support the museum and its missions and kind of also, I guess, immerse themselves in this kind of lunar experience as well?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So for folks who can't visit, I will say we actually have an outreach assembly that travels. We do virtual programs as well, so we're always happy to talk about these missions and the careers available in the space industry. And even more broadly beyond that, I think there's some exciting resources that folks can use to just track the moon and lunar missions. And I mean, it's our cosmic companion. We see it in the night sky. So there are ways we can connect. A great resource is NASA Moon Trek. That's a software you can use online to kind of take some of the same journeys that we just did today, flying around the moon and exploring these sites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, and we hope folks get a chance to visit. Our goal is to show the missions, but also to immerse people in team building activities. So you
Mhm.
go to a science station and explore geology, and then you could engineer a rover. You could be part of a cosmic city council and decide what's the future going to be like on the moon. What is the
Wow.
law and policy going to be like? And I think that's a message we really want everyone to leave with is it's going to take scientists and engineers, but also artists, lawyers, tradespeople, medical experts, that there really is a place for everybody in space.
That's so cool. Like, wow. And I love how, like, I definitely think talking to you today kind of is allowing me to kind of see, like, hey, this is not so too far off in the future. Like, of course, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but maybe in my lifetime, we'll be able to see and like, it'll be like just like going to Florida or something that, like, oh, I'm going
Yeah,
to the moon or something like that.
yeah.
It's super cool. Yeah.
Um, you were asking about different resources, and I think another just exciting website to check out is Space Enabled.
Mhm.
Um, that's a group that's really looking at just the equitable distribution of all the great things that we can get from space. So
Mhm.
um, from Earth orbit, we're learning about how to do medical innovations, how to take care of the environment, how to build innovative new materials and manufacture them. But then what comes next, and how can everyone on Earth benefit?
Mhm.
So it's a really interesting group, Space Enabled, that's thinking hard about those kinds of social justice issues as we're living in this time where all this science fiction is now becoming science tech,
Yeah.
really going to the
Yeah.
moon for good, and harnessing its potential.
For sure. Yeah. As we wrap up today, is there anything else you want to add? Or I think you already pointed out really a lot of really great resources, so I'll make sure to link those down below as well. But is there any like special museum website that you want everyone to check out or anything else like that, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, moonshotmuseum.org. We hope you can check it out. A trip to the museum is all about immersing yourself as a futuristic lunar settler, which is I think is just a blast. And our model is that sort of team building field trip. So we're going to be building out more and more missions. So the goal is you never go on the same mission twice. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, we just hope everyone who can come visit us. And anyone who might be living far away, we're happy to do some outreach, and just be part of, I think, spreading the good word about everything exciting that's happening in space that we can be a part of now. So
Yeah, for sure. Again, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. These slides are super cool and like I really felt like I was on the moon, so that's super cool. Yeah. And to everyone watching at home, definitely check this out. Super cool, and I'll see you all next time.